Hi, welcome back to the class today. So for today, the topic we're going to take are access control and importing data. These are two topics we are going to cover today because we have covered till data schema and then later on we'll start from CMD. Okay, so let's start with today's topic, which is access control. Now, what is access control? If you might have remembered when we were taking initial one or two classes, we talked about there is a concept in ServiceNow called as role-based access control. It is also called as RBAC in general term. I think RBAC is a very general terminology across the industry. It is called as role-based access control, so which is kind of there in all the systems nowadays because security is very, very important. You cannot allow anyone else to log into system into the changes in system, of course. There are different kind of access levels. You have view only, you have which is called as read only also. You have write, you have update, you have delete. So all these operations, which I'm talking about, they're generally called as CRUD operations, CRUD. Okay, let me just write it more, maybe it might be more visual to you. So I was saying these operations are called as CRUD operations. And when I say CRUD, it means create, read, update, and delete. So whenever you want to do any of these four operations, right? So if you remember in our database studies, we used to have something called DDL, DML, DQL, right? So anything which is query related, which is only read, is kind of read, right? And update, you have DML where you're updating things. So all these operations require some kind of access in system. Now, generally you give access using the roles. For example, if I were to go here, right? And if I just search the word roles, and what I'll do is I'll just go to this role area, user roles, group roles. This is the role. There are so many roles defined in ServiceNow already, right? For example, if I show you ITL, this is the most common one which people use in ServiceNow, right? So which means this is that person who actually does all those support tasks, which means opening an incident, updating an incident, opening a change, opening the problem, updating, taking it from open to closed at all the stages, right? So this is a very important role which we give. But generally, as a part of best practice, we should not be giving role directly to an individual. We should be creating a group called, for example, I create a group called ITL group, which means whoever is added in this group will have ITL role by default. This is the best practice for ServiceNow also. That you create a group called ITL group. Under that group, if you want to add multiple groups under that group, okay, any support agent, any group with the name support in my system, because all of those groups are actually for the support teams, they should all be part of ITL group. So what we're doing here is we're creating a parent group first. Under that parent group, we have already given ITL role to the parent group. So the moment I add any other groups to that parent group, those groups will also get the same role. And when I use users under those groups, they'll also get similar roles. For example, if I just want to show you something here, let me just create a new slide. So what I'm saying is I'm taking this one, right? For example, this one I take, and I'm saying this is a parent group, for example, which is ITL group. Then I add multiple groups under this one. This is a group, and any group which has support word in it, right? And then I'm saying that I have users in that group, this group, right? So what is, and I'm giving the role to this group as maybe ITIL role. What will happen eventually is that you have created a parent group called ITIL group. All those groups which you're creating in this parents, so all of that will be percolated back to this particular thing, right? So it will go here, and from here, all the roles will go up to here as well. This is the best practice. So you directly do not give any role to a specific user. We generally add them into a group which already has those roles. This is how you actually assign roles and responsibilities. Now, any questions on that part so far? Okay, so let me just go back to the point about access control lists, ACL we talked about, right? Access control. Now, apart from, so there in system, there are already a lot of rules defined, lot of responsibilities defined, groups, users, everything is defined. Now, this is where when you actually start from scratch for an implementation, you generally ask that, okay, how many groups will need to have ITIL role? How many groups will need to have approver role? How many groups will need to have only returning role, right? These are kind of questions you generally ask when you actually implement anything. Now, this is a very simple part, which every administrator does almost on his day-to-day life, so that they kind of manage those users' identity using access management policies in the company. So if that is a standard overall policy across all the systems, you go from there. And that is, for example, there is access management system or identity management system in a company called as ABC. So all those access requests will be raised in that system. And from that, your support teams will actually add you to those groups which you are talking about, which you need access to. Now, what happens here, when you want to do some advanced things, which are called as ACLs, which I'm talking about, access control, right? This is where things become a little tricky and little, I would say, risky as well. And you get, even if you see, just understand this part very interesting, but even system admin role by default does not have security admin role, which is actually allowed to write ACLs, write those access control rules. So he also has to elevate this role to security admin. So I'm just taking both the roles. In this case, he can manage workspaces, and in this case, he can manage the. So it grants modification access to high security settings, allow user to modify the access control list. You can click on more info. We can see in Docs or Server now. That's okay. We don't need to go there. But only after this, let me just click on OK. So moment you see this OK button, right? Do you see this lock getting opened? It was actually a closed lock. Now it is open, which means right now you are working under special privileges. You should not be doing something which can break things, because it can break things. It can have an issue on day one. For example, if you, by mistake, if you have modified an existing ACL to something which is not expected, it might create problems for everybody, that they can't even see any form, or even if they're able to see those records, everything will be read-only for them. This is where these roles are very, very important. Now, if you were to go from where can you do this? First of all, system security. This is where you can do this access control. Okay, there is something called high security settings also. Do you see this? This is generally not available if you do not go to that particular role. So from here, we generally enable, disable a lot of things. We don't need to go into each of these things right now. I'm just telling you how to do certain things. These are some extra privileges which are there. So for example, if you have enabled this role for you, then after you do your thing, actually disable those rules. Sorry, not rules, disable your access immediately from here before you do anything else, because we don't want to take risk. And this is where you have access control list, which is where you have all the access controls defined already in ServiceNow. Okay, so this is how generally things work. And few more, just let me tell you some use cases, right? So there are use cases where somebody just needs approval rights. There are use cases where somebody just needs to see reports and dashboards. He does not need to see everything else. There are cases where people just need access to incidents and not to problem changes. There are cases where people need access to a certain inventory item. For example, server team will need access to only servers, write only access. I'm talking about read only access everybody has, right? In case of support teams at least. And network team will have write access to network devices. Database team will have write access to database devices, because that is their responsibility to ensure that they are updated all the time, right? Now, this is where you define any. Let me just see if there is something for incident already. We can see that. Right. So this is your incident create. Let's open this particular thing. So it is incident rule. It is having operation of create, and it is on record type. Let's see this. So what does this rule say? It says that type is record in this case. Operation, as I said, you can have a lot of operations here. Generally, those CRUD and even beyond CRUD operations, you have some more execute, you edit relationships, you save as template, add to list. There are other rules also which are required sometimes. But yeah, most commonly the roles we're talking about is CRUD, right? Which is create, write, read, write, and delete. So admin override. So which means I am overriding this particular thing, whatever has been defined out of the box in this particular case. Now I'm putting it in the table, and this is where I have given a rule called SNC internal, and this there is a condition on this table actually that what kind of role do we want to have. Or let me just show you something which is not advanced. Because the moment you see something is advanced, in that case, it will actually go to a script, and we don't want to go into scripting area right now. We just want to see, for example, this is a record, and it requires the same thing: record, delete, admin overrides, incident. Then here I have put in. Now, see, understand this concept, right? Access control rules allow access to the specified resource if all three of these checks evaluate to true, which means only when all these three are there, then only you are good to access those things, right? The user has one of the roles specified in the role list, or the list is empty. You have not specified the user in the role list. Conditions in the condition field evaluate to true here, right? Now, for example, it says 80 records match a condition because it is putting this rule on incident table, and it has not put any filter, which means any record you want to actually do here, you can play around with any record in this as a particular. Now, what it says, it gives you permission to delete. It gives you permission to delete on incident table, but you require ITIL admin role to do that. The normal ITIL user cannot delete records from incident table. This is just an example. You have 21,000 such records, right? So that is why I'm just giving you what all things do you look at when you actually create an access control list. So this is a type, operation, admin overrides. Then you define the table. You can define the field also. Now, for this particular table, you can define a particular field. Can you see the star here? This is very interesting part. The star is actually used as a wildcard, which means if I define none, which means it is for the entire table, we don't worry about it. When I talk about star, which means for all the fields in that table, this particular access control list is applicable. Now, when I say any of a particular field, then in that case, that particular field, they cannot delete. Any value in that particular field, they cannot delete because I have kind of specified that, okay, no, I don't want to delete anything from that particular field, right? So this is where you actually have those access control rules defined. Now, interestingly, the way it runs is, right? So it kind of, you have something called row and column in this. If I talk about any table, right, let me go to, for example, incident. And if I were to go to all record share, right? This is now, I just want to kind of maybe put a situation where I want this field to be non-editable or so I can make that happen, right? But the idea is, the point they're trying to make is that you can have at a record level, which is complete row level thing. So complete record, you can put that restriction, or you can put a restriction on a particular field, which is at a column level. So this is called as row, this is called as column level, right? So this is how you can do things. And table and field rules should match. I mean, what happens generally is, for example, if you defined a rule at a particular table and another access control for a field on that table, for example, right? Then the way it runs is, the first thing it runs is the most specific to most general. So what will be most specific? Of course, the field rule for that table, because it is more specific, right? We're talking about a particular field of a table. So it will run from most specific to most general. That is how any access control rules run. And that is why we don't want to actually give them multiple options to do certain things. For example, let me just give you a use case. It might clarify things to you quickly. For example, if I were to go here, right? So few more things, right? As far as access control is concerned, what happens is you have these three things here. First access control is checked as authentication level and login level also. I mean, when I am logging in, at that time, it is making sure that I have access to this interface to this particular instance, right? So that could be defined either at an LDAP level. For example, you have given access to as at an LDAP level to users. That is how they can log in their SSO, LDAP, all that thing they can do. Or you have given an application level user ID password, then they are using that particular thing. Second thing is user interface, which is about which applications and modules will this user be allowed to run. And that is governed by roles. So we remember we were talking about one thing yesterday, that when we create any custom table, at that time, a new role for that custom table gets created by default, which means it is something at a system level that whenever you create a new table, you always have a role for that table also. Which means when I was giving example of server team, network teams, for example, if you've kind of created some custom tables for those teams and you want them to have access, then by default, you should be giving only that role, which is by default created as a part of creating a table to that team, so that they are the ones who can actually edit those records. So the idea I'm trying to tell you here is, first is authentication level, second is interface. I mean, what can you see in the menu itself? Which menus and modules and the left-hand navigator side are visible to him, which is governed by roles. And then third is database. This is what we were talking about some time back. Tables, which tables he has access to, first of all. If he does not have access to incident table, then whatever you do later on, he cannot actually see those records at any point of time. These are also governed by global system properties. We can talk about it in a little sometime. And it is also governed by access control rules, okay, which is just we discussed, right? So there were three things. Table.none. So we remember when we were applying at ACL, we had the option called, we had select table, and then there was a none thing, which is where I said, no specific field selected. This rule applies to the whole table, including all of its records, right? This is what is important to understand. Table.none, table.field, which means I'm talking about only on this field, I am applying this rule. Rest other fields, I am okay. Let them do whatever they want to do. But on this field, I have a restriction. In this case, when it is wildcard, which is asterisk sign, this rule applies to every field on a record without a table.field rule. I mean, wherever you have put in this one, this will be run first because it is most specific. Then it will run this rule. That first of all, it will see if you have put any condition on a particular field on a table. This is where this rule will run. And after that, when this rule is already run, or for example, there is no such rule on a field, then which means this rule applies to all the fields on that particular table because we have put an asterisk there. So it is like select star from table XYZ. That is what we do as a normal database query, right? The star is same thing, that get everything. So do you have any questions on this concept? Otherwise, I can show the example also, right? If you don't have any questions. Right. So just understand this. For example, I have a table called change request. And on this table, there are one condition is none, where I have not selected any field per se. Second condition is I have selected all the fields. And third condition is I have selected one field only, which is called as type. These are three different ACLs I have applied. Now, an ITIL admin has read access to this particular thing, which means he can read all the records in that table. This also means the same thing. He can read all the records in that table. In this case, ITIL can read all the records. So ITIL, for example, okay, so we have put one thing here. Change request type is read. In change request star, we have put it blank, which means we are saying that normal ITIL user does not have access to all the fields, even to look at all the fields, because you don't have even read permission for this particular thing. So he can see only one field, which is called as change request type. Whereas ITIL admin cannot see this type because we have not written read thing here. For this particular role, we have not written read role. So this is what you see exactly here. ITIL admin cannot see type, but he can see every other field in the record. Whereas ITIL cannot see any other fields in the record and can see only type field, because this is the only area where he has been given access to. So most specific to most general, this is what it works out, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So these are the access control things. I think we have talked about table.config yesterday, if I'm not wrong. I think we've seen that yesterday, right? Table.config, which means, for example, I'm talking about incident.config config. And I think we have talked about it because we could see all these different values. We have seen this, right, yesterday. Okay, so let's move forward, right? And I told you already, most specific to most general, it works first at table level and then, sorry, first at field level and then at table level, right? So if I were to, for example, if I were to write a new rule, this is the option I have to select. So say same screen which I have just shown you. I just want to show you these are multiple kind of things. Generally, we do it as at a record page. Sometimes you want to do it as a UI page. You can do that. Sometimes you want to do it at a processor level. You can do that. But generally, I mean, people generally do it at record level. That is the normal pattern, right? So we understood this. Conditions we have seen. Advanced we have seen. If I write the advanced thing, then I have to write the script here. If I do not put advanced thing, then I think the script thing will go away. Now there is no script thing, and I just need to select the right table here. That's it. So this is about the access control concept. Any questions on that? Otherwise, we move forward. Let's move. I think yesterday we talked about database schema already. Now, there's an interesting thing, right? So, for example, what happens generally when you run ServiceNow on a day-to-day basis, you need to import data from multiple sources because not everything is entered manually into system, right? I mean, you can't actually do that because it requires a lot of time. So what happens generally is you can import data in multiple tables. I mean, in any table for that matter, it is up to you completely which table do you want to enter data into: incident table, problem table, change table, users table, location table, department table, whatever table you want to put data into. You have this flexibility to import data. And the best part about that flexibility is it allows you to import data from multiple formats. When I say multiple formats, let me tell you a few here, right? So one is, for example, XML, then Excel, of course, then you have CSV, then you have LDAP, then you have JDBC, then you have server level authentication. So there are multiple things by which you can import data into system, right? I will show you here example, and then I click on import, right? Import XML is the option. When I select import, I will not be importing anything. You have these options here to select the data. Now, I will not do it here because access control is the most difficult, as I said, thing to do. Not difficult, I will say most tricky, so I will not go into that area. Right? I just want to show you something. This is also one of the areas where we define the security for our overall instance, system properties, and under that you do security thing. There is one thing which was left over from the previous thing, which was access control. Now we'll go back to this part, right? Now I'm just removing my access from here. I'm just removing this access. I don't want this access anymore. This is the best practice. You should always do this, right? Whenever you have done your thing for ACLs, just remove it. Now there is no locked icon here. It is gone. Okay. Now, how do you, the concept-wise, what happens is you import the data in a particular staging table. So what happens is, okay, let me just go back to this diagram. I think that will help you understand it better. So this is what happens, right? These are those variable data sources from which you are actually taking inputs. You're taking data to import in ServiceNow. Now what happens is you have a table in ServiceNow, which is kind of staging table, which is called as import set table. The main purpose of this table is the same, that it takes data from different external sources and it transforms the data back into ServiceNow into a particular target table. And as I said, you can put data into network switch, gear networks, switches, servers, whatever. So any CMDB table, any task table, user incident groups, wherever you want to transform it. The idea you have to understand is that you create a temporary table in ServiceNow, which is an extension of this table for a particular record, which gets automatically created. And once you do that, you transform the field. When I say transform, what happens in transform? For example, I have got some data set already, and there are already 8 to 10 headers in that field sheet. right? Now, if you remember, we had an Excel sheet. I think I don't have it right now. For example, this is an Excel sheet I have, right? So I have these headers. So these headers are the ones which will be, when you map these, maybe in ServiceNow, the value, the field name exactly is not same, which is device number or owner location, right? It has some other name in ServiceNow. So to do that mapping between field from source data to the target data, target table, you do some transform mapping. You'll see all of that in real thing right now. It's giving you conceptual understanding at this point of time that from here, you take the data, you keep it in a staging table. This is called as import set. And from there, you define a transform map, and then you push the data into systems. This is the best part about it, is that it is quite safe, because if you are doing it using import set, then which means you're not directly importing anything in this. So as a best practice, you are not supposed to import data directly into these tables, unless and until there is a situation where you have exported an XML already from this table and now you're putting it back into this table as an XML, which is fine. But if you're taking it from external sources, you should always take it in the import set table. Now, conceptually, did you understand the concept, what I'm talking about here? That you take data from multiple sources, there are so many feasibilities, you put it in a staging table, which is called as import set table. Then you do the transform mapping between different fields from this, and then transform data finally, right? Now, for example, when I say transform data, this is like this, right? So you have a source, you've taken a source, and you've got these three fields: username, first name, surname. Now, in ServiceNow, that was the field name on the source side. Now, in ServiceNow, you have different names: first name, last name, user ID. First name can be matched with first name as it is. Username should be matched with user ID. Surname should be matched with last name. This is where you define the things at transform map level, that it should actually do the same thing accordingly. Now, if there is no conceptual problem in terms of understanding the concept of what we are trying to do, I can show you live how does it work. Before I start, do you have any questions? No. Now, there's one more thing. For example, I have updated a record already, and now I'm updating same record using a different Excel into the same table. Then if I update it, it will create a new record. That is why there is a concept of coalesce. Which means this means that on this particular field, you will do a matching first. That do you have an existing record with this field, which is marked as a coalesce field? If yes, then you will not create a new record. You will just update the existing record if the record matches with that particular field where we have enabled coalesce. For example, in this case, if I just show you, this is the original sheet I have, and this is one more sheet I have. Now, in this case, wherever the device number is same in both these cases, right? For example, there's a device number which is same here and as well as here. I can see this here, right? For example, this is 0099, and here also we have this 00099, which means that if I am making any new entry of this record, then it should actually update the old entry rather than creating a new record, because in that case, it will create duplicity. So actually, if you ask me, in real world, coalesce is very, very important concept to do. Whenever you are doing a transform map, you should ensure that you have done the coalesce. Now, you can do coalesce even on a single field. You can do it on a multiple field. You can do conditional also, which is script-based coalescing. But then single field, you understood, for example, in this case, I can see there is only one thing which is kind of unique in nature, is actually device number. So in this case, I can put coalesce on device number. However, for example, just assume a scenario where you have data of computers, I mean desktops, and you want to put coalesce on two fields, host name and serial number, because you want to ensure that there is no duplicity. I'm not deleting, and sorry, I'm not creating a new record unnecessarily. So you should put a coalesce on two fields, host name and serial number. If both of them matches, fair enough, update the record. Otherwise, create a new record. Then in that case, if one of the record matches, then you'll troubleshoot further. Why did it create a new record? Then you'll see that why there is a situation where serial number are same but host number different. So that goes into another track, but it gives you a very quick understanding. Okay, where things are actually breaking for you. Now let's see this. I'll upload the same sheets in system. I'll show you how to do the entire exercise. This is important. That is why I'm just giving you a real life demonstration here. How does this work, right? For example, I click on load data. Just see this. Everything is under system import sets. So now if you want to see what is under system import sets, you can actually do this system import set, and everything which is under system import set is here. You can do multiple things here. We will not talk about all of them. We'll just talk about the ones which are important for us, which are kind of used on a daily basis. Now, by default, when I create load data, which means what I'm trying to do now is I am creating, when I say create table, which means it is actually extending that staging table. If you remember, we have seen the staging table here, which was called as import set table. From here, it will create this table. So whenever we do a load data in system, then it creates a table, and maybe I just want to say infinity imports, and then the name is U infinity imports. It is automatically taken here, right? I took the option as create table because I'm creating a new import set altogether here, right? Now I go here, I'm choosing that file which I had with me. This is called as infinity data. And by the way, this file is here, very much here, right? So if I were to go to the learning content, which I was talking about, on this only, you have this file attached. So you can take it from there itself, right? When you do your own practice, you can take it from here in the simulator exam. It is there, those sheets there, right? So I've chosen file already. Now let me submit the reports. I've submitted it. Can you see this? What it shows to me? It shows process 7 and 7 inserts. All of them are there, right? Now I'll just see the data. So we have already seen the import part has been taken care of. Now we're going to loaded data, and I'm seeing here, I can see state is pending for all of them. And state is pending all of them because they have not been pushed to target table yet. But and this is called as import set. You can see the number, all of these are there, and there are overall 7 records in that system, 7 records here. And they have not been pushed because the state is shown as pending. Why they are not pushed? Because we have not done the transform mapping yet. Now here we will do the transform mapping. So I've clicked on create transform map, and I'm waiting for the menu to come up for me. Right now, I can create anything. For example, if I were just want to say infinity transform map, I just want to say that, right? And if I just do source table, now where do I want to put it? There is a table called infinity imports. This is the one we just created, right? So there's a table. There was a table here which I created already because it's a part of data schema exercise. There was a table to be created here. The table name was infinity. Just give me 1 second. Which table is taking? CMDB CI hardware. This is the table name. CMDB CI hardware infinity. That is why I was just confused, because I know that there's a table. So I'm going back, create transform map, and I am selecting a table called as this is where it is asking you to define source table as well as target table. Source table is your infinity import, which we just saw. And here we have this is the one. So just see this important thing. Right? This is where the source table under which we just actually created an import set. This is where I actually had the data. From here, I am mapping the data to this target table, which is already there in system with the name UCMDB CI hardware infinity. And I'm just saving it. And I'm not clicking on any options here. Copy empty field, no. Create new record and empty coalesce fields, no. We don't want to do that right now. We don't want to create a new record. I'm saving it. Once I save it, then I have to now define those maps. So I have done the mapping at a table to table level right now. Table to table level. Now we have an option of auto map, matching fields, or mapping assist. So let's try first auto map matching field. Let the system do the mapping first for us, and then we will see if there is some field missing. We will try to see what can be done about those fields. So I clicked on auto map matching fields, and it says field maps created. Now it says field maps created, and it has already mapped these 4 fields. Can you see this? This was the source field, u_name. Here, target field is name. U device number, U support group, U device version. So this is already matched. I don't need to worry about this part. Now I can see that there are 2. If I go back to my sheet, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fields are there which are not yet mapped. Which fields are not mapped yet? You have name, device number, support group, device version. So name, device number, support group, device. So device owner and owner location are not matched. So we have to match those fields now. Now we will click on mapping assist. Earlier it was auto mapping. Now we are doing the real mapping, right? So we wanted device owner, I guess, and we wanted location. This is the data for source table, which we had put in from Excel, and this is the target table under in ServiceNow. This is where we're defining the field mapping. Second was location, no location, right? These 2 fields. Now, this is the mapping name to name, device name, device number. Now here also I have to do the same mapping, device owner. So owned, there's a field called owned by here. We are going to that field in system ServiceNow. It's called as owned by field. So I have put in owned by field here. It is mapped to this. And then there is the field of location, which I can map this to this one. So here I am doing this manual mapping. After doing this manual mapping, I'm making sure, okay, all the fields are proper name to name, device and device number, group to group, all of those things, right? And I'm clicking on save now. Which means I am now sure that my mapping is all perfect. Now I just need to run the transform map, which I've just created. This is where you actually do the transform map. Run it from here. When you run it from here, it will show you whether it failed or it passed. And it is asking the question, which import set? This is the one we just created. If you remember 0003 I talked about when I was showing you that. And this is the table under which the data will go. So from this particular import set, on this table, the data will be transformed now. Data is already there in this import set. We had already uploaded the data from the system, right? It says complete, completion of success. Now, if I were to see whether data has come or not, I have to go here. So if you remember, there was a table I was talking about, which I created as part of the simulator activity which we had for data schema overview. So under that particular thing, when you actually do the practice at your site, you will have to create this table in inventory. And here only we are doing all these things right now because we don't want to play around with the existing tables. So can you see this? There were no records before this particular transform map, and all the data is now in the system. All these 7 records are in system now. Otherwise, I would have to create single record. It would have taken a lot of time. So this is the best way to do it. Imagine you have thousands of records, 5,000, 10,000, and this is the real story. You always have these number of records. And this is where you actually map things and the data gets automatically updated. Now, this was the first part where we just saw completely fresh data to be uploaded, which we've done. Now, if you remember, we talked about the concept called coalesce, because now I have got a new sheet from the same team after 5 days, and they're telling me this is the updated sheet I have. Can you please upload it? Now, as a ServiceNow administrator, my first thing to understand is, if I upload this sheet, will it create any further duplicates in system? Because if it is going to create further duplicates in system, then entire inventory is going for a toss, and I cannot let it happen. That is why I'll always go back to system, and now I'll go back. Now I already have the import set created. I already have the transform map created. So I have everything created now. I don't need to worry about it. But let's see this, right? I will go back to this particular thing again. Load data. I'll do a load data. In this case, I'll do the same cycle which I had done earlier. The only difference in this case will be I will not be creating a new table because I have already created a table for this particular import, which is for Infinity. Now I'll use that table which is already there. I have this table called Infinity imports. I don't have to create a new table again for the same source of data because data source is exactly same. It is just that we have more number of records now at this time. Now I'm clicking on choose file. I'm selecting the updated one this time, not the data, original data one, right? I'm updating it. I'm clicking on submit. Let's see what happens. Can you see process 19? Because in this updated sheet, you had those 19 records with 20 in this header. So right, actual records are 19 in number. So which means that is why it says it has processed those 19 records. Now what I'll do, I'll go to the, because I know there is a transform map already for this particular thing. So I don't need to create a new transform map here. I'll go to the one which is already existing, the one which I just created. Maybe the one which I created was the name Infinity, I guess. This is the one which I created. Now, as a system administrator, my duty is to ensure that whatever I am updating now does not create a new record unnecessarily if it already has a record. And we've already confirmed from the source that this is the unique key for me, device number. So if this is there, then any record which is coming up for this key after that should be only updating the existing record, should not be actually creating a new record, because otherwise we'll create duplicates. So which means I know now that this field is acting as a coalesce field for me. And this is where I'm going to do things, right? I will go here. And for this particular field, which is U device number, I'll make this as true. I'm ensuring that this is marked as true from coalesce perspective. When I do that, it means that now when I update any Excel in this particular transform map, all I have to do is the data does not get duplicated, and only on this is the only unique identifier for me right now. This is all database concept, right? It is not something specific to ServiceNow as such, uniqueness and all those things. Now I have to run this. I have marked coalesce field as true. I have to run the transform because I have already uploaded the data, if you remember, right? Did I upload the data? I think I did upload the data. Now let's do a transform. Maybe if you don't remember that you've uploaded data, then let's do this. Load data. Okay, I remember we have done this because it has shown to us 19 imports, right? So we are good on that part. I'll go back to transform map. And here I'm selecting this infinity one, which I just created. And now we're not creating index because it is not a very oops. That's fine. So I've ensured that this field is marked as true, device number. Now I'm clicking on transform. Now again, the same question, which import set they will take? They will take the fourth one because this is the latest one I have uploaded, not the third one. If you remember, when I did the upload latest, the target map is same. I'm clicking on transform. It is transforming the data now. It says it is complete. So see the quickness with which it happens, right? So that is why it is always recommended. So import data is a very, very common thing when you actually do ServiceNow day in and day out operations. And for administrators, this is the, if you ask me, this is the most important, which takes time and effort for them on almost on daily basis. Now, if I were to go here, all devices, under that infinity inventory, I can see 19 records total. Can you see this here, right? It does not create a duplicate because if I see, there were 7 records here in this table, and there were 19 records there. There were total of 26 records, but it created only 19 of them because it had updated the ones which came from the original sheet, right? This is where you can see the entire data. This is how the transform map actually works, and this is a very important step for you to even do day in and day out, all right? Any questions on the transform data part? Which means, okay. So I think this is where we have completed till here, right? except this virtual agent, which will club later on with ServiceNow mobile apps and ServiceNow portal. And from tomorrow onwards, we'll start taking classes for them, configuration management, CMDB. This is again a very, very important class we have to take tomorrow. Catalog administration is done already, so we have done it with catalog already. Right? We don't need to do it again. And then we'll go one by one, platform scripting, migration, integration, custom application development, and then we'll talk about mobile apps and virtual agent, and then ITSM, incident problem change. So for today, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, or I'll stop recording for now.
I don't have any questions.